Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead of you. Today, I have for you whether or not I shall be captaining Cole Palmer or Mohamed Salah, whether I shall be making a defensive transfer to replace my injured Newcastle asset, or whether I should be making a forward transfer to replace my potentially Newcastle injured asset. Aside from that, I will also be looking at blank game week 29 from my team, as well as your team, and having some more macro level insights and of course insight into the player prospects this week should you be wishing to sell or bench some of them. Other than that, if you have not subscribed, consider doing so, as we're so close to 7,000 subscribers and so many of you who watch regularly, quite literally thousands of you, have not pressed that button. And of course, for those of you who are new around here, equally I would be greatly appreciative. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy. And the final thing I would like to say is thank you very much for the support, because you are very consistent in that and very kind in that I am greatly appreciative. So now let's hop into the video. Give it a couple of game weeks and this category shall not be such a short discussion, but for now at least that remains the case, because given we have blank game week 29 coming up, given he has a fixture, and I wouldn't say it's a good one considering the improvement in West Ham under Graham Potter and their form. It's not the worst one though, however, and neither is Wolves away, and for that reason, it's very difficult to justify a transfer on him, especially when I will be taking hits elsewhere, well, a hit elsewhere to field 11, and some of you maybe even taking -8 to field 11 / just leaving yourself with 10. So there's nothing really we can do here, and I don't want to just go on about it for no reason. I hope he keeps a clean sheet, and that's about all there is to say. I mean, yeah, like you're not going to sell him. You're probably not going to bench him either. It's very unlikely you've got a goalkeeper rotation going, given how the landscape panned out prior. And even if you do, he's probably, or arguably, got the better fixture this week. Yeah, there's not much to say, and I wouldn't want to waste your time. So now let's move on to the potential transfer dilemmas. When you look at the structure of my squad, you will notice that for me, at least, the priority must be in the form of a defensive transfer as opposed to a forward transfer. Why? Well, I have Robinson, Gabriel, Lewis Hall, and Konate. Well, Lewis Hall is out for the whole season, and hence he is the one being sold. Konate, however, might miss the game in 28, or miss probably isn't the best word, but he might be rested for it, given he just had PSG, and he will have PSG again on Tuesday night. And obviously, for anyone who watched that game, it will be another intense game at Anfield, and it was a brilliant, brilliant affair last night. The thing about him is I do think he's going to start. So I'm not too bothered about that, but I would at least like to give myself some sense of security and safety to ensure that if he does miss out, I'll have someone coming off the bench for him. And it's not just that. I have to make a transfer in game week 29 anyway in the defensive category. So I may as well bring it forward by 1 week and ensure that not only I have cover, but maybe upgrade my starting 11 as well. Because Robinson's away to Brighton. I also think they pose a decent matchup for Brighton. I think the Seagulls are in very good form, and with Robinson primarily having assist threat as to goal threat, his ceiling's always somewhat limited, albeit one of the higher floor defensive assets we've had for a majority part of this season. I would say they're starting to tail off, with Fulham not keeping as many clean sheets / him not getting as many assists as he was prior, which I think is fair enough. I think the amount he was returning was honestly ridiculous. The rate was so high. It was like 1 in 3-ish, which is phenomenal. But you could imagine and expect that to tail off. And as such, I'll be selling Lewis Hall and benching Anthony Robinson to field a stronger starting 11, and also because it satisfies my plan in game week 29. So who? Well, there are only 2 teams with 3 fixtures from 28 to 29 to 30, which I think are even somewhat attractive. I think the fixture set overall isn't particularly attractive for those outside of Crystal Palace assets, but of course they're blank in 29. Hence, I shall either be going for a West Ham or Wolves asset in the form of either Aaron Wan-Bissaka or Ryan Ait-Nouri, which you shall be seeing in the next slide. Moving on to the forward category, and in my case, Alexander Isak. Even if he misses out, I'll have Foden and Ouattara coming off the bench, one of them. And both will see minutes. I'm quite confident both will see minutes. I think at least one of them will start, right? And as such, it makes far less sense to move Isak on. Also, because as we'll come on to in the next section of this slide, from a strategic standpoint, it doesn't make too much sense, because it would be blocking Haaland somewhat / making me take an additional hit to getting Erling Haaland in game week 29. And Isak could very well start on Monday. The good thing is it's on Monday, so he's got a little bit more recovery time, and there have been pictures of him training, albeit by himself, and he's been doing some media work for the Carabao Cup final. So hopefully he's not in too bad of a condition. And then the other thing is there's just a lack of good options in pretty much all categories, but I would say especially the forward categories. Right? Who else am I meant to go to? Like, yeah, I could go to Marmoush, but we spoke about him and everything you need to know yesterday and why I'm not so bullish on getting him. But more so from a fixture standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, if I am to make a forward move now, then I'll only have one free transfer for Game Week 29. I'll still need to make a defensive move. And yeah, sure, I could just make a midfield move, take a hit, and have a playing 11. That would mean I don't have a route into Erling Haaland. My route into Erling Haaland is selling Salah, which I can't do this week, and making a forward transfer, right, which is 2 transfers. And then the defensive one on top would make it a -8. So for me, this game week, it makes far more sense to make a defensive one. Lastly, and I just thought I'd chuck this in there, if you are on free at 29 and you don't own Eze for this week, I really like it. I think inside forwards against Ipswich are quite a good matchup. I think what they can struggle with sometimes is picking up runners, picking up people who understand how to occupy certain pockets of space deeper in that Ipswich block. And yeah, Eze certainly got that. I also think he might be slightly more talismanic in nature, given Mateta won't be there. Nketiah is quite good at combining, very selfish in that sense. Nketiah is quite good at combining and being able to facilitate Eze picking up those pockets and receiving the ball in advantageous situations. So for all of those reasons, I like him. Just if you wanted to go for someone with some upside and you weren't on, well, you are on free hit 29. And aside from that, not much else to say on the side. Let's move back to the team and see which transfer I've gone for. I have opted to go for the Wolves man who I went for earlier in the season, who certainly did not treat me so well. Hopefully this time around, it will be a different case, similar to when I purchased Foden for the second time this season. Why have I gone for him? Well, it's primarily a fixtures play. I'm not even sure if his prospects, attacking output prospects, are better than Aaron Wan-Bissaka's, but that Southampton away fixture, even though Southampton could absolutely, certainly score, I think it tips the balance for me, where it's such a good one in terms of his prospects for delivering an attacking return that I have to go for him. Also, he's got 2 home games as well, sandwiched either side of that, whereas Aaron Wan-Bissaka is away twice, and I certainly factored that in to my decision. I also think that mainly without Cunha on the left-hand side as well, he might have more attacking responsibility, even if that's in the progressive capacity. That'll just allow him to enter the final third a little bit more, and maybe they just choose to overload that front line. And not only does he pop on the overlaps, given he's starting in a wing-back position, but maybe he's allowed to underlap a little bit more, just to provide that technical quality in the half space and return from there. That's why I've chosen Ryan Aït-Nouri. Konate is, I feel, due a goal. I mean, he is a real aerial presence. I don't think Liverpool have had the highest quality of corner taking recently in comparison to what maybe they should be delivering, considering the takers that they have. Southampton aren't the best at defending their box. For example, you just saw Levi Colwill score a goal. You saw Nkunku score a goal from a corner as well. So I really wouldn't be surprised if I pick up a goal from there. Moving on to Gabriel, well, there's not really too much to say here because Man United are poor at defending set pieces, quite poor, very poor. And he is arguably the biggest box threat in the league, if not certainly the biggest box threat in the league. And secondly, they don't exactly pose the most threatening attack, not just due to the players they have, but more so the patterns of play, and I think the system as well, and just how the profiles of players interact within that. So for me, there's not really much to be done there. And I spoke about Robinson in the last section as to why I wasn't particularly eager to start him. So that is how the defense will be lining up. And now let's see which one of the 8 attackers gets benched. Now you'll see that Dango Ouattara currently occupies the first bench spot. However, that is subjected to change. And I would like to give myself a little bit more time to think about it. The person who he was really competing with for the starting spot was Phil Foden, because I'm not entirely sure he's going to start. I hope, however, Pep interprets the game in the same way that I do, where I think that it would be very useful to have one of your 8s as a more pocket player type against this Forest side, and that would really be Foden, because you want a bit more, not just physicality, because I think De Bruyne can boast that in certain instances, but overall athleticism at the moment, I think Foden will give you that more against a side that are so strong, physical, and lethal in transition in terms of Nottingham Forest. Whether he plays him and Marmoush together, I'm not so sure, but I am hoping that he plays Foden. And look, maybe that changes. Maybe I get a leak because obviously it's the early kickoff and I end up swapping that around. But for now, especially because of the quality of Phil Foden, and I feel like he's probably got a higher ceiling, given Dango's minutes, I would say, are slightly capped at 9, at least to around 70 with the Van Nissen being back. I think it makes more sense for me to start Phil Foden, albeit it is quite close. The other thing is I think Spurs are in a decent run of form at the moment. I don't really want to be betting against them. hence why Otara finds himself on the bench. But look, if he is to start as the 9 against Spurs, I think it's a good prospect, even if he gets 70 minutes. And who knows, maybe I'll bench someone else, maybe I'll bench Foden. I will probably have that finalized in solving your problems. But for now, it'll be Foden. And then the other 3 midfield, I mean, like, it's not like I'm going to bench Palmer. It's not like I'm going to bench Salah on the assumption that I think he starts, and I really do think that. And then it's not like I'm going to bench Neto when I solely bought him for the purpose of targeting 28 and 29. He's coming off the back of an 11-point haul, and I think it's his birthday on the day of the game. And players this season seem to do quite well on their birthday. Literally no way I bench him. Aside from that, there's not really too much to discuss there. But let's move on to the forwards, which means that all 3 forwards have to start. Yohan Wissa, he's not getting dropped. I think Aston Villa away from home, and just in general, will always give you a little bit of a chance. He's looked really sharp as of late. As I've spoken, if he scores, it's really a 6 or 7 point goal, given how good he's on the bonus system. So I won't be selling him or benching him. Certainly not selling him. Moving on to Ollie Watkins, I was more inclined to be open to selling him. But number one, the forward options in terms of the replacements are very poor, in my opinion. And I think the best one is Yohan Wissa, and I own him. And 2, with it being a Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday split, with it being a Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday split, I think that's far kinder to him in terms of his ability to rack up at least 70 minutes, which I think he will do against Brentford. I think it's a good matchup for him. And it's his old club. And players just seem to have that little bit of extra gusto against their old club, and understandably so. They want to show how they've developed, and yeah, mainly that. So as a result, I'm more than happy to start him. He's also top quality, right? And very good on the bonus system when he does score. And then ISAK, I'll just bet on him starting on Monday. And the thing is, I'm pretty sure he won't be on the bench. So if he doesn't start, then okay, no problem. Dango Tara can come into the side. So that is that. We will now move on to captaincy, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion about blank game week 29 to conclude. I know I said in my video that I would be captaining Mohamed Salah, and I made it out to be fairly clear-cut for myself, at least. However, in the 24-ish so hours that followed, I really did try to justify a Cole Palmer captaincy to myself, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Even though Leicester, and I mean this with great respect, are a poor side at the moment, and even though I don't necessarily trust them to set up in a deeper block, I do think they will, and I still don't trust us to go and dismantle it completely. I think with Palmer's vein of form, I wouldn't be surprised if he bounced back and scores a hat-trick. I really wouldn't. But I just feel like it's not the best time to bet against Salah. When he plays against a Southampton side that seems so insistent on creating these 1v1 defensive situations for themselves all across the pitch. And I just think with the quality of him, he can hurt them. I think the fact that he had 5 to 10 minutes off against PSG, and the fact he didn't score actually might serve as a good thing. Just gives him a little bit extra motivation to get back on track, because he certainly wouldn't have been happy with his performance last night. And for those reasons, I'm going for him. Now, some of the caveats to this, some of the things which people aren't so happy about or make them uncomfortable when it comes to captaincy. Number 1, minutes. I'm actually okay with his minutes. I don't think they'll be lower than 70. I just don't think Arnie Slot can sub him earlier than 70. Not because he doesn't have the power, or because Salah doesn't have the respect for him in that sense whereby he can pull that off, but more so just because Salah is in the most brilliant physical shape, and he really, really will want to play. So they'll probably have a discussion about that beforehand, and I can see it being 75 plus, which I think is enough for me to captain him. Secondly, I know there's concerns about Ramadan, because obviously in terms of fasting, it will have an effect on your body, but I did do some research. I used Grok on X, and his numbers actually in terms of GNA are better in Ramadan than when not in Ramadan, which I was surprised at in terms of his goals and assists from the time that he joined the Premier League with Liverpool. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. One thing is though, however, his returns in the games of the evening were a lot better during Ramadan than that in the day, but I'm going to hopefully just not read too much into that and just see that there's not too much of a difference and that he'll be all right. And then the third thing, I guess, that people are worried about, not so much worried about, but I guess looking to capitalize on, is the effective ownership difference, and the fact that if Palmer does outscore Salah, the game will be significantly bigger in terms of rank. But for me, whilst that's an attractive prospect, and I've done that many a time, I think it's very hard to use that as my justification when Salah's got so many other good things going for him. And as such, I'll be captaining Mohamed Salah. Well, at least there's a 90+% likelihood that I captain Mohamed Salah. Finally, to touch on what I shall be doing for Game Week 29, and the discussion of Mohamed Salah will continue, because I really very, very, very likely will be selling him. So, why and how? Well, how? I will be removing Ollie Watkins. I feel like I may as well save the 0.3 in ISAK, 0.3, 0.4, maybe even 0.5, and have him for the game in Game Week 30 because I think he's got a better fixture with Brentford at home, and sell Ollie Watkins to get Erling Haaland, mainly because of his prospects in Game Week 30 as opposed to 29. Obviously, if I want to captain him in 29, I shall do so, but I'll consider that later. And then I shall be selling Salah, and that's it. Yeah, that's it. And that'll give me 11. That's not great because I'll have Neto away at Arsenal. I'll have a Foden whose expected minutes I won't be entirely sure of. Likewise with Dango, but I'll just have to stomach that for that game week. Who will I be replacing Mohamed Salah with? Well, ideally Bruno Fernandes, but if I get Ryan Knight-Nori for Lewis Hall and then I get Haaland for Watkins, I can't afford that. I'll be 0.3 off. So maybe I just double down on Brentford and I get Brian Mbeumo. Equally, I like that fixture of Ipswich away. I think if Forest play a back four, I may very well go to Morgan Gibbs-White, which I'll also be comfortable with. And the good thing about Bruno is Man United are in such poor form, and he really likes utilising him in the pivot, that maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to get away with it. Not so much in terms of like the result, but just in terms of him having a reduced ceiling. So it won't be too much of a big deal before a ball's even kicked. So why am I selling Mohamed Salah? Well, for me, I think it's actually one of the easier decisions. Well, not that we've had this season, but it is a fairly easy decision. I know a lot of people are selling Cole Palmer in the spot, but Palmer has a fixture in 29. And personally, I think Salah's not the best captain in 30. I think it's Haaland. And even in terms of his individual prospects, I would say that Everton at home can be quite a difficult game for him. I mean, when he went away to Everton, yeah, sure, he hauled, but he had a quiet night compared to usual. I think from a tactical standpoint as well, what Everton will provide will be difficult for him. And I trust Mikalenko to do a good job down that side. For those reasons, it makes it a lot easier for me to justify selling Salah. And not just that, on Wildcard 31, I won't want him because I think he just causes too many problems in terms of the overall squad structure and what you'd want and how you would like to allocate the funds down the line. And I won't want him in 32 or 33 or 31, like I said. 34, obviously, I'm planning to free hit. And if I want to get him back on 35, I should have some free transfers in the bank, if not 3 or 4, in which to be able to do so. And as such, I just don't see the need to keep him. Okay, fine, I won't have him for Game Week 30, and people might captain him, but I think Haaland's a better captain anyway. So at least in terms of what I would be doing, I'm not losing out on much. And I'm certainly not losing out on a fixture. And when it's Cole Palmer, just for the sake of keeping Salah for one game week when I won't captain him. That's my reasoning behind that. Just something to think about and plan for. And that is all she wrote for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like on the video and equally subscribe. If you have not already, 7,000 subscribers is just around the corner for us. Have a wonderful day, and I shall see you quite shortly for solving your problems. Goodbye.